live, but if you are watching the live, happy Sunday. This is my last video of the year. This is gonna be my last live and my last video of the year. I wanted to talk about self-esteem and just feeling unworthy in general. Believe it or not, I used to hate myself, and I'm not over exaggerating. I really used to hate and despise myself. And I never said it out loud. It was just something I quietly, secretly used to feel. Like I used to constantly look at other people and wish I was them, especially other women. I would constantly be looking at other women, wishing I could be them. Like even before social media existed, even when I was a little girl, I would constantly look at other little girls and be like, oh, I wish I was like her, or I wish I could be her, or I wish I was that pretty. And it's crazy because I knew how beautiful I was. I knew that I was, attractive. But deep down, I didn't feel like I was pretty enough. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel like I was smart enough. I just I thought so low of myself, and there's a number of reasons. Number one, I was the oldest of three. On my mom's side, I'm the oldest of three, and I'm the only girl. And my mom had me when she was 15, so she was a really young mom. And because I was the oldest, I was pretty much like the substitute mom. Like I pretty much I was like an assistant to my mom. Like whenever my mom wasn't around or whenever she had a lot going on, I had to step in and take care of my brothers. And me being the oldest, my mom, she always expected more of me than my brothers. She had very high expectations of me. She was way harder on me than she was with my brothers. And that made me feel like I had to be perfect. I never felt like I was good enough. Like I was always trying to get her approval, trying to get her acceptance, trying to always seek her validation. And this caused me to become a perfectionist. Like I constantly used to beat myself up. I used to constantly put myself down and not out loud. Here's the thing. That's the tricky, sneaky thing about it. A lot of times we put ourselves down in our head. We don't say it out loud. We don't say out loud, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that. But we say it in our head silently. But we think because we're not saying it out loud, we don't even think we really just don't realize the things that we are quietly saying to ourselves and thinking about ourselves. So, I used to constantly have I just used to really think low of myself constantly. Like I said, I didn't really say negative things about myself out loud, but I would constantly think them. And even with my father wasn't really in my life. He was in and out of my life. But on top of the fact that he was in and out of my life, he molested me when I was little. That's a whole nother story, but I didn't realize he molested me until I got older. But throughout my childhood, he was in and out of my life. Like he would be consistent for a few weeks and then he would disappear for months, maybe even years. And then he would pop back up. And I always had this feeling like, damn, my father doesn't even want me. If my father don't even want me, what man is going to want me? Like these are things that I subconsciously used to think. I never said them out loud though. I always just felt that way secretly inside, but I just suppressed it and I never addressed it because I didn't realize that's what was going on. But he was in and out of my life. So I'm like, dang, if my own parent, part of the reason, half the reason why I exist, doesn't even want me, I'm not good enough. So that was another thing that contributed to my self esteem. And here's the thing, your self esteem should come from yourself. That's why it's called self-esteem. But those first 7 years of your life mold who you become and shape who you become and how you turn out. And kids are sponges. Kids are so sensitive. And if the parents are not pouring into their children those first 7 years of their life, really throughout their whole life, and especially their childhood, but those 7 years, those first 7 years are the most crucial. And if you don't have parents, if you don't have caretakers who pour into you and speak life into you, that is going to negatively affect your self esteem. Because when you're a child, when you first come into this earth, who are you looking to for love and care and support? Your parents, the two people who brought you into this earth. So that was another thing that affected my self esteem. And growing up less than. I don't want to say I grew up poor, but looking back, technically, yeah, I was poor. I wasn't homeless, but I was definitely poor. But growing up less than or poor, whatever you want to call it, and not only did I grow up less than, I was going to suburban schools with a bunch of white kids whose parents had money. They were well off. So that really fucked with my head too. Excuse my language. I do got a potty mouth off camera and it comes out a little bit on camera, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, so I'm going to school being like me knowing my situation at home, knowing my mom don't really got it like that. She's a single mom of three, struggling, blah, 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 like, food stamps, Section 8, all that. But I'm having to go to school with mostly white people, white kids. Nothing wrong with white people. I'm just saying I was surrounded by rich white kids. I'm a quarter white by the way. My dad is mixed, so he's half white. But yeah, I love all people. I'm just bringing up the fact that I was going to school with mostly rich white kids. So it's one thing to go to school with mostly rich kids, but it's another thing when they don't even look like you. But yeah, so that affected my self esteem too, because I just always felt that classism. And I didn't even know what classism was, but I always felt it. So that affected my self esteem too. And the number one thing, probably one of the biggest things, which I know is going to sound so silly, one of the things that really affected my self esteem was ever since I was a little kid, I've always had a shaky voice. And it's still there. And it used to really bother me to the point where I wanted to commit suicide. And I know that might sound dramatic, like you wanted to commit suicide because of your voice, but it's like, yeah, because my voice is a part of my purpose. It's like you gave God, this is what I would be thinking to myself: God, you gave me this purpose. You gave me all this wisdom. I have so much to say. And I feel like I'm meant to speak in front of a group of people, thousands, hundreds of people. But I don't feel qualified because I got this shaky ass voice. So I used to want to kill myself because I'm like, man, if I'm never going to be able to get rid of this shaky voice, I don't even want to live, because if I don't have a strong enough voice to deliver these messages, who's going to want to listen to me? I'm terrified even just answering a question in class when I was a little kid. Anytime the teacher would call on me, especially if the teacher would ask me to read something, I would be like, oh no, it's going to happen. My voice, everybody's going to make fun of me. Everybody's going to wonder what's wrong with me. Like, I don't want people to think I'm weak, or like this was a constant fear that I constantly had all throughout my life. But a few years ago, it was crazy. A few years ago, I had this epiphany and it came out of nowhere. And I was like, Kyla, let's just say you're never able to get rid of your shaky voice. Let's just say you always have a shaky voice. Are you going to hate yourself because of that? Are you going to not love yourself because your voice be shaking sometimes? And when I asked myself that out loud, I realized how silly it was. It's like you hating yourself because of your voice, but does God hate you because of your voice? Does God look down on you because of your voice? No. God loves you. God adores you. He created you. He made you. Yeah, granted, a huge part of the reason why my voice shakes is because I have an anxiety disorder. But I feel like God did that. God played a part in that because number one, it makes me unique. Number two, there's probably people out there just like me who might battle with anxiety. And because they might have an anxiety disorder, battle with anxiety, they might have a shaky voice too. And that might be something that they're insecure about and they feel like, oh, because I have this flaw, I can't really live in my purpose. And it's like, I feel like God made me this way so I could be an example to show those people you can do it too. Because I used to have this, oh, my feet is falling asleep because I've been sitting in this weird ass position on the floor. Let me get more comfortable, guys. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little lower now. Maybe I can bring the camera down just a tiny bit. Ooh. Don't want my little tata to pop out. What was I gonna say? Sorry, y'all. Ah, had to adjust myself. But yeah, I used to have this mentality. Once I get rid of my shaky voice, once my voice no longer shakes, that's when I'll really love myself. That's when I'll be able to fully live in my purpose. Like I used to subconsciously, mind you, I would never say these things out loud. I wouldn't say them to another person. I wouldn't even say them to myself. These are things that I silently thought in my head. Once I get rid of my shaky voice, that's when I'll love myself. Once I get rid of my shaky voice, that's when I'll be able to finally live in my purpose. And God had to make me aware. God had to make me realize it's not about once you get rid of your shaky voice, then you can do X, Y, Z. It's really about doing it despite your voice, doing it regardless of how your voice sounds. And I think that's a lot, that's something that a lot of people struggle with is you have this flaw, you have this imperfection, and you feel like until you get rid of it, until you fix it, you're not good enough. You're not worthy. You're not qualified to do whatever you feel like God has called you. But that is not true. You're actually supposed to still do it regardless of your flaw, regardless of your imperfection. And a lot of our flaws and imperfections are not meant to be fixed or get rid of. They're meant to be embraced because, like I said, they make you unique. Ooh, so yeah. Oh, and another thing that really affected my self-esteem was I would I don't know if this affected my self-esteem, but it's something that I struggle with. I used to always have this guilt complex. I used to always have a guilt complex, like even and not even when it came to mistakes I made that hurt other people, but even when it was the mistakes that I made that hurt myself, I used to always beat myself up. Like if I made a mistake, whether it hurt somebody else or it just hurt me, I would constantly replay it in my head over and over, constantly beat myself up like, oh, I should have did this or I shouldn't have said that. And I'm looking down because I'm looking down at my notes. But and that stemmed from me having such high expectations as a child. Oh, I got something on my lip. What I got on my lip? Is that a piece of hair? I'm sorry. I feel something on my lip and it's annoying me. But oh yeah, my mom had such high expectations of me when I was a kid. And that caused me to constantly beat myself up as an adult. Like anytime I make a mistake, instead of giving myself grace and forgiving myself, I would constantly, like I said, replay the mistake in my head over and over again. Really like torture myself, punish myself. And that was another thing that I had to realize too. It's like, Kyla, you so worried about getting forgiveness from God when you really need to be forgiving yourself. Because here's the thing, God, God already forgave you before you asked for forgiveness because He knew in your heart you were remorseful. He knew in your heart you made a mistake. A lot of times we beg God to forgive us. God, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And it's like, I know God be like, I already forgave you. Like, why you keep bugging me? You need to forgive yourself. So it's like we have a hard time forgiving ourselves and giving ourselves grace. It's actually easier for us to forgive other people than it is ourselves. So that was another thing that I had to work on was forgiving myself because I didn't realize me constantly having this guilt complex that was affecting my self-esteem too. That was making me feel unworthy too. Because I'm like, well, I don't deserve to be blessed because I fucked up. I made a mistake. I'm not worthy of God blessing me or helping me because I'm not perfect. It goes back to perfectionism. So, like I said, that was another thing I had to work through was forgiving myself. And here's the thing true confidence comes from God. Not just believing God exists, but truly knowing God on a deep level. Because when you know God on a deep level, it not only helps you to know yourself and who He's truly called you to be, but it also helps you to love yourself. The closer you get to God, the more you seek God, the more you will know who you are, know who you truly are. Not this broken, damaged, egotistical version of you that you might currently be, but the person God called you to be. The closer you get to God, the more He reveals to you who you truly are in the spiritual realm, your higher self. And here's the thing, like I said, true confidence comes from God, but not just believing in God, but understanding on a soulful level. You are created in His image and likeness. So if you're created in God's image and likeness, and God is the highest of them all, why would you look down on yourself? Why would you think less of yourself? That's blasphemous to God. If you believe that you're created in God's image and likeness, but you're not acting like it, you're not walking like it, you're not carrying yourself that way, that is an insult to God. Because if you think God is so great and amazing, and you know that you're created in God's image and likeness, you have to think the same way about yourself. Now, of course, don't get it twisted. God is the highest of the high. Nobody is higher than God. But you should think highly of yourself because God thinks highly of you because you're His child. It's so weird how we subconsciously have this perception of God like He's just this mean dictator that's going to punish you for not being perfect. And it's like God is the complete opposite. God is so understanding. God is so loving. God is so forgiving. And I know it probably disappoints God how low we think of ourselves. And it's really it's society and really sometimes unfortunately our upbringing that makes us think low of ourselves. And it's like if a person is confident in themselves and if a person compliments themselves, it's looked at as arrogant or it's looked at as this negative thing, but it's like you should speak life into yourself. Even in the Bible, it says life and death is in the power of the tongue. So if you're talking down to yourself and even thinking lowly of yourself, that goes against everything that God wants for us. So that's another thing too. I'm constantly saying affirmations, constantly encouraging myself, constantly giving myself these motivational speeches. I'll look in the mirror and give myself a motivational speech. I'm constantly complimenting myself. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'll be like, good morning, you're so beautiful. And I really mean it, but it's not just because of how I look, it's because of who I am, who I've become. And that's another thing. There's so many beautiful women all over the world, beautiful women, especially, go on social media. But a lot of these beautiful women, these picture perfect women who may have even got enhancements to look picture perfect, a lot of times you look at them and you think they have it all. They're so confident, like their life is probably perfect. But a lot of times it's the complete opposite. Yes, they love how they look, but they don't love who they are. Because a lot of times they don't know who they are because they don't know God. It all ties back to God. Once you really, 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 and I'm speaking from experience, once you really tap in with God to the point where God is your spouse, whether you're a man or a woman, God is your spouse. Like, y'all like that. And not in a weird way, but it's like you're so close to God, people would think you were having conversations with another human because that's how tight you are with God. That's how much you communicate and sit with God. Once you get to that point, it gives you a confidence and a boldness that you can never get from doing a bunch of enhancements and alterations to yourself. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about because there was actually this really, 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 really pretty girl, a pretty like it girl or whatever. I don't want to say her name because I don't want to draw any attention to her. But it was a really pretty girl who, if I said her name, everybody would be like, oh yeah, she's gorgeous. And she's had enhancements. But the crazy thing is, she was gorgeous prior to her ever having any enhancements, like flawless. Like, there's not a lot of humans I look at and I'm like, oh, that person is perfect, 10 out of 10, no flaws. But this woman, prior to getting enhancements, that's how I viewed her. But guess what? She recently did an interview talking about how she has self esteem issues. And her self esteem comes from other men desiring her. And people were in the comments like, what? Like, I can't believe that she has self esteem issues. She's perfect, blah, blah, blah. Hold on. Blah, blah, blah. And I was listening to it and I was reading the comments and I'm like, I'm not surprised. That's probably why she got all those enhancements in the first place. You can, like I said, you can love how you look all you want. You can do whatever enhancements or alterations you want to do. But if you don't love the person that lives inside this meat suit, the soul that occupies this body, if you don't love that, you will always have self-esteem issues. You will always have that little feeling of not being good enough, not feeling worthy. And that was another thing that I had to realize too, because I ain't gonna lie, I used to want almost everything, every procedure you could think of, I used to want when I was like 20. So this was like 11 years ago. Before it was super normal. I wanted Botox. I wanted a boob job. I wanted butt shots. I wanted a nose job. I thought my nose was too big. Like, I wanted lip injections. I literally wanted everything because I'm like, once I get all these things, then I'll be good enough. But now I look at myself like I'm the most beautiful woman on the planet. And I'm not saying that to be like arrogant or cocky or anything. Honestly, I feel like every woman, every person should feel that way about themselves. But it's not just because of how you look, it's because of who you are. It's because of who you are. That's why I look at myself that way now, because of who I am spiritually. That's what makes me beautiful. Oh Lord, I feel like I've been yelling at y'all. I'm just so passionate. It's the fieriness in me. I'm an Aries. I know some people don't believe in astrology or whatever, but I definitely believe there is some truth to it because, yeah, it explains a lot. When it comes to me, I can only speak for myself. Let me take a little sip of my tea, guys. I'll be forgetting my mic is down here. Hold on. Let me read some of these comments. Jeremiah 29:11. Yes, that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite scriptures. What country are you from? I'm from the United States. I don't know where my ancestors are from, but I'm from the United States, unfortunately. You're so beautiful. Thank you. So are you. Uh, Hi, beautiful. You are. Smile. Thank you. I don't know what that means. Oh wow. I didn't realize so many of you guys were watching and commenting. Wow. Well, hi guys. I'm sorry I haven't read the comments until now because I don't like to get distracted. And yeah, I don't want to mess up and forget everything God wants me to say. So yeah. But yeah, forgiving myself, saying affirmations, speaking life into myself, and healing. Really, those were the biggest things. Healing, because here's the thing, we don't realize how much our trauma affects our self-esteem and whether or not we feel worthy. So if you struggle with your self-esteem, or if you just feel like you're not good enough, if you feel like you're not worthy, heal. Any childhood trauma, unresolved trauma you have, you need to heal that. Say affirmations every single day. Speak life into yourself every single day. When you make a mistake, do not beat yourself up. Forgive yourself, give yourself grace, and move on. Like, it's not that deep. We gotta learn to let shit go. We gotta learn to let shit go. If you made a mistake 10 years ago, 10 weeks ago, 10 months ago, 10 days ago, even 10 minutes ago, the past is the past. Let it go. Learn from your mistake and just move on. That's another thing, too. Is like, I don't know why we be feeling like we have to punish ourselves so God won't punish us. But it's like, God don't want to punish you. He wants you to learn and grow and do your best. Like, so yeah, if you need healing, if you need coaching, if you need guidance, remember, guys, I am a spiritual teacher and coach. Check out my website, www.coachwithkai.com. I would love to work with you, especially with it being the new year. If you know you got some mental blocks, if you know that there's things you've been battling with mentally, I really would love to help you. So, yes, check out my website, www.coachwithkai.com. I'll make sure I put it in the description box. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys. I love you so much. I'll see you guys next year. Bye.